to the Shades of Entrepreneurship, where we interview entrepreneurs to inspire the future entrepreneur. I'll be your host, Mr. Gabriel Flores. So grab a drink, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. My next guest is the host of Dear Dads and Free Ideas, where he shares insights on entrepreneurship, leadership, and family life. Please welcome the CMO and co-founder of Penji, an Inc. 5000 creative subscription service, Johnathan Grzybowski. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Shades of Entrepreneurship. This is your host, Mr. Gabriel Flores. Today, I'm here with Johnathan and his absolutely gorgeous child. So those folks that are very gracious enough to watch us on YouTube. Johnathan, how are you doing?
Doing good, man. I just want to let you know that this is a world exclusive. I decided to, introduce my daughter Madeline to the Shades of Entrepreneurship podcast. So this is probably a one and only time exclusive access, and also a tax write-off on my expenses, because this will be a marketing expense, I suppose, right?
Yes. Hey, as long as the kid works and they have to get their royalties. In fact,
yes.
A fun little fact, folks. One thing I tried to do is me and Johnathan actually were on the call earlier talking. My 5-year-old, I actually had her record the opening to the podcast, The Shades of Entrepreneurship, originally, with the goal of, like, once we start getting monetized, I could then, give her royalties and essentially just put it into an IRA for her and kind of build it up, So me and Johnathan are definitely on the right track here. But Johnathan, go ahead. Now we're going to talk about Penji today, but before we get into all that, go ahead and introduce yourself. Who is Johnathan?
Yeah. If you were to listen
question.
Yeah, for sure. If you were to listen to that, if you were to listen to a podcast that I was interviewed by, I would probably start off by stating my business. And then now, as a father, I'd say, first and foremost, who is Johnathan? I am a father. I am a husband. I am a dog lover. And all of that comes before what I do for a living, which is Penji. And I'm one of the co-founders of Penji. We're a creative subscription service. We try to make our service the most simplest service that you can use for all of your marketing and creative needs. We want to try and make sure that if you were to sign up for our service, you can easily be paired with a very talented creative. You could be paired with a website developer, a marketer, anything, all within minutes, and all at 70% of the cost. And we've been doing it for, I'd say almost 10 plus years now, and it's been an amazing journey.
I love it. And it's like almost like the Angie's list of creators, right? Finding like the best creator for your service almost. What's interesting is, like, if folks that, if you have ever tried to purchase or build out a website, that's like, relatively sometimes close to $10,000 that you're coming out of pocket to build out a website. And this team is doing it 70% of the cost. That is remarkable. So Johnathan, before we get into Penji, tell me about your kind of entrepreneurial journey. Where did you start, and why the heck did you start to become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, why am I stupid? So essentially when I've always been relatively entrepreneurial, and I'll kind of give you the full gamut of everything. So when I was 15, I moved to Cherry Hill, New Jersey, from Philadelphia, and I started my own lawn mowing company. My first employee was my best friend and my brother. We were making, I think, $2,000 a month at 15. And I spent it all on Wendy's, junior bacon cheeseburgers, and Pokemon cards. So that was pretty cool. I would be a billionaire by now if I held on to those Pokemon cards, given the current rate of Pokemon card sales. However, I spent it on dumb things. Anyways, then I worked for Apple for a little bit. I was very sad at my job at Apple, although it was a great career. And I left at around 20-ish, 22, 23. And then I was like, I need to do something more in my life. I don't want to help these types of customers anymore. I'm not solving the world's problems by checking if an iPhone had water damage or whatever it may be. Um, I gave my 2 weeks notice. My boss at the time just said, "Listen, dude, you're depressed, and I hate looking at you. I think you should just leave the company now." And so, thankfully for him, I am thankful to him for him doing that. And I had basically had 3 months savings to figure it out, and I decided to create a social media management company. Um, and it failed miserably. And then I met my now co-founder, and we had a digital marketing agency for years. And then we kind of productized our services to graphic design because it was the only thing that people said that we were good at. And we turned it into a business. We were a recipient of Inc. 5000. We have thousands of customers paying us on a monthly basis. We have over 500 plus employees scattered all throughout the world. And I would say, as you see, my daughter, life is really, really nice. It's fun, and I'm finally solving a problem that keeps me up at night, but I'm excited to wake up for every morning.
Yeah, no, I think that's a brilliant idea. In fact, folks, I would encourage anybody that's listening to think exactly the way Johnathan is thinking. How can you solve a problem for the mass amount of people in a very short amount of time? Because I really do I love the idea of SaaS products that kind of help people. In fact, folks that are listening, right? You guys generally know one thing I talk about pretty consistently is trying to create a SaaS product specifically for entrepreneurs, right? Coming into this stage. How do you where do I find my funding? Well, what nonprofits are within my state that can help me scale? What are the different legalities in my state? What's the difference between an LLC, a S corp, a sole proprietorship? What's a trademark versus all these different things that we kind of ask, but in one central location. And one of the things, Jonathan, I've been kind of debating is, do I sell that to like the Chamber of Commerce, right, and have them be the people and they kind of distribute it out, or do we sell it directly to the entrepreneur? And very much like any SaaS product, it's an onion. So the more you peel it open, the more it's going to cost. The more you cry, it's great. In fact, Jonathan, I'd love to kind of hear a little bit more. You mentioned, before you guys got into Penji, you or Penji, sure, you actually had a bit of a failed company. Tell us about what you were doing and some of the things you learned during that failure.
Very similar to what I just said, which is the problem wasn't large enough. I have a very jaded opinion about entrepreneurship. If I could just be perfectly honest with you,
Let's
I
do it.
think a lot of the influencers and the social media marketing nowadays is glorifying the world of entrepreneurship and also income, I guess you could say. What is the word I'm looking for? Different multiple streams of income.
Yep.
Um, I think that's such a it frustrates me to see that content, to be honest with you, because the amount of stuff that I've had to go through and my co-founder and a lot of other people that are, I'm sure, listening that have to go through on a daily basis and then to glorify it to make it look easy. Sure. I mean, it can be easy if you want it to be. But I think like to make a really memorable business and a remarkable business, I think it takes so much more time and effort and stress and gray hairs and everything else in between. There was a point in time in my career where 5 years of my entire life, I didn't earn a single dollar, right? Every single dollar that I made was funneled directly back into the business that allowed us the cushion that we have today, right? And the other aspect is, well, okay, well, I can come up with a really good idea, and then that idea can then be funded by an individual, right? Or a big company, whatever it may be, right? That's another crap way of thinking of things. And um, I think when you mentioned like your child recording the beginning, in our not to be morbid, but there's a will. We have a will that we created recently because we have to think about those things as a kid when you have a kid, and it effing sucks, but it is life, right? And and there's a stipulation that I made that I'm actually really proud of for myself is you can get money, sure, but if you decide that you want this money for business, you have to have at least 10 paying customers first. And I think that's like the most important thing that I want people to walk away from within this conversation is that you don't necessarily need outside funding. I love your idea of going to chambers of commerce and also to to local nonprofits. That's exactly how Penji started. And I'm not sure if you did that research or not, but like that's exactly how we started. So we we literally, so the failure, so the question was about failure. The problem that we had wasn't big enough. We absolutely sucked. We were selling this crap service that we were hoping that people would buy. Ultimately, people bought because I was the sales guy and people liked me, right? Like that's the nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah.
But in terms of the problem that we were solving, nothing, zero, no problem that we were solving. We're just putting like roses around it and giving excuses as to why results didn't happen, right? I'm just going to be honest. We were terrible. And it was not fulfilling. So we created this, we realized what the actual problem was, which was to hire people. It's ridiculously hard to bring people on. It's
Yeah.
ridiculously hard to be able to teach them about your business, but also at the same point be able to not have to worry about the W-2 aspects of tax, the insurance, all that stuff. So Penji is a credit card transaction. It's documented according to your taxes as a credit card transaction. Easy, right? You sign up for Penji, you get paired with, as soon as you submit the project, you get paired with the best possible person for that job. And then within 24 hours, you receive a completed draft. And if it's good to go, you download it and then you do whatever the hell you want with it, right? Like that's how it should be in my world, right? In our world. And so like I said before, what keeps me up at night and wakes me up in the morning is solving that problem, making even easier for people to receive that. And so the lessons that I've learned is like if your problem's not big enough and if you're not willing to sacrifice for it, honestly, shut the podcast off now. Don't even bother. But if you actually are motivated by it and you want more, then I would say obviously keep listening and you'll learn hopefully a little bit more about how to do it right.
Yeah, and to your point, that's kind of really where the podcast started. Was essentially the pandemic. I was going to Syracuse getting my graduate degree, going into I've had previous before that had ran my SLM apparel business, and then I'm starting to see all these local community members here within the Portland, Oregon, Pacific Northwest really just get decimated. And so
Yeah.
I was like, why don't I create a podcast to provide some education and some insight? Because there are a lot of trials and tribulations. I spent a lot of nights in this basement alone. I was working last night until about 10 o'clock at night, doing a newsletter and a blog, making sure the SEO words and the keywords are all in there, making sure the backlinks, and you inevitably are going to screw up. I've been doing the podcast now for 5 years, and I just finally hired my first employee. I have not been paid.
Nice.
I don't pay myself, but I finally brought on somebody to kind of help with content creation, bring on that. Because of that, now we've now extended. So again, the business is Creatively Insane, which owns the shades of entrepreneurship, and now we're starting to get little side jobs where we can kind of do like we'll do a campaign here and there, and just to kind of get a general sense of where we want to go. But for me, the ultimate step, right? And now again, folks, you can check this out in theshadesofE.com. I talk about it often. Some of you folks know we started a nonprofit here in Oregon, Latino Founders. Our goal is to help scale 100 businesses to $1 million recurring revenue in 5 years. Now,
Nice.
why $1 million? It's not some magical number. Well, $1 million, as Johnathan probably tell you, that's really where it becomes a job. That's where the founder can begin to finally pay themselves, and now they can pay their employees a competitive wage to keep them. Because again, Johnathan mentioned it's very difficult to keep these employees, right? And also train them up to your satisfaction to make sure the right person on the bus. And then it's also tough when they leave and you have to train somebody else because it's very costly and time consuming. But the goal really is how do we continue to create this ecosystem where at the end of the day, my goal is to kind of get you closer to the finish line, or you actually get so close to the finish line that you actually move your finish line and extend it even further because now you have the tools, you have the experience, and you have the network, you have the mentors around you, right? Where the average of the 10 people will hang out the most. So now that you have that, the likelihood of success begins to increase a little bit more and more and more, right?
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, and to tell you how the secret sauce for my life, I created a podcast too. My podcast was called Blind Entrepreneurship.
Oh, I like it.
And I actually created it close to a little bit before yours. I stopped it, believe it or not, because it wasn't fulfilling to me anymore. It wasn't that journey that I wanted the story that I wanted to share anymore. And it probably took me I probably started like eight to 10 years or so ago. And I had 500 episodes, and then I stopped it for 5 years, and then now I'm starting a new version of that. And what I found for myself is that I'm the best version of myself when I am creatively telling stories and when I'm being creative as a whole. In addition to that, if you want to start, if you want to like, if you're listening to this right now and you're starting out, to me, podcasting is the best vehicle for sales on human earth, right? Number one, you talk to me right now in a very intimate setting. You met my daughter. Straight up, you're the first person to ever be on a podcast. She's the first podcast to ever be on. Um, we have a relationship now, you and I, regardless whether you hate me and I like you, or I like you and you hate me, whatever that scenario is, we have a relationship and we're talking about real stuff.
Yep.
So the ease of you coming up to me and being like, hey man, could you share this post? Or hey man, could you sign up for my newsletter? Or hey man, I have X event that's coming. Do you want to speak on it? Like, there are so many ways that you have because you have that friendship. And in addition to the chambers of commerce, right? I networked like a fiend for several years. And I went to every networking event. I was the youngest kid in the room every single time. And then the nonprofit stuff, and then the podcast stuff. We were able to get our first 100 customers directly from that, just from those three things. If you can't do that, you don't deserve to have a business, like straight up. And I'm not trying to be rude. Like, what I really want is I want people to be pissed off at what I'm saying right now. So then it weeds out the people that are still here.
Yeah.
So this might be this might be the most potentially watched podcast, or this could be like everybody already clicked out. And at the end of the day, like, the people that are still here are the ones that are going to make the money,
Yeah.
and they're going to solve the problems too.
And to your point, with this podcast, folks, again, subscribe to the newsletter, check out theshadesofE.com. Go check out Johnathan. We'll have this information on the website as well. We'll create a blog post for him and everything with link backs. But one of the things that's really interesting is that core group that you create when you're networking. That it's a beautiful thing to network, because one, you're going to start to learn a lot of things. You start to learn new things. One thing I always say, if somebody's interested in learning about any new industry, go to networks, go to conferences, go to something that relates to it. Fake it till you make it kind of thing. At the end of the day, everybody started, at the ground zero level, and they started to learn that somewhere. But that doesn't mean to go wing it. I'm not saying to wing it. I'm saying to go out there, network with people, learn, grab a mentor, create your own personal advisory board, and really grow. Ask difficult questions, because I think that's where we struggle with the most is we're sometimes shy away from asking those pointed questions like financing or taxes or bringing on employees, or even just the legal stuff about, getting a license, making sure those little things. In fact, here in the Beaverton location, the Chamber of Commerce actually goes out to our Latino community, because a lot of times what happens is, one person started out babysitting one kid, then they have two kids, 3 and 4. Now, 8 years later, they have themselves a business, then taxes come down. Right? Like, hey, what's going on? You've been getting paid for 8 years. And the chamber's like, well, yeah, well, you actually have a business. So we can actually start to write some of these things off. So you're not having to absorb this huge tax bill. And so again, there's things we know, there's things we don't know. And there's a lot of things we don't know. And that's why, like, I would completely agree, like the networking, getting out there and chatting with people is so important. I wish, to be honest with you, I had done it sooner. I think
For sure.
I didn't start doing it until, mid 30s almost. But the amount of value I've received from networking has been huge. In fact, Johnathan, you mentioned you met your co-founder. How did you meet your co-founder actually?
I went to high school with him. And then I saw him posting stuff on social media, and then I asked him for a meeting at a Starbucks, and then we weren't friends in high school, but we just knew each other. And so he had a web design company. I had a marketing company, the one that failed. And then, we kind of just shared resources with each other. And then again, like, it kind of just blossomed from that, but we never quit. And the tax stuff, I that's like my second favorite topic to talk about, or maybe third favorite topic. It's really hard to find, like, it's really easy to find advice nowadays, but it's really, really, like, there's so much bad advice,
Yep.
and that's like, That's the key. And I would just say that if somebody's starting out, like you have to just go out and do it and look like a dummy for and then just go from there.
Yeah, I can't even tell you how many times I've sent out newsletters with either misspellings or the link didn't work, or Jonathan came out before. He's like, "Hey, actually, this link doesn't work on your website. Just let you know." So it's good. There's always constant room for improvement. Now, Jonathan, in your experience, what would you say has been one of the most challenging parts of your entrepreneurial journey?
Communication with the people that I lead. Like, Gabriel, you have one employee, right? And there's a very intimacy in that aspects, and you can probably give that attention. Um, but when you're gonna, maybe you won't. I don't know. We're all different people. But when I talk to people in the very beginning of my particular career, I was always vague because and I always assumed things like, hey man, go do this and go do that, and I'll talk to you in an hour. And then it was like, what? Like the results that I received were not that. And so over the years I've found that, which by the way, I just want to be clear, I'm just thinking about this. I'm not trying to knock that you have one person. One person
Oh
is
no,
an
not at all.
Okay, cool. One person is an incredible
Yeah,
honor.
I'm glad I
Um,
got there.
Hell yeah, bro. Hell yeah. The communication aspects are so key. And over the years, I've realized instead of being vague, I like numberize everything. So like, I literally go task one, task two, task three, task three. And I've actually used ChatGPT for a lot of this too, because like in my head, I'm like, okay, this is clear. And then I give it to somebody and it's not clear. Um, and then I also use Notion a lot to do that. So like for me, communication has been key. I'm still not the best communicator. I've translated that over to my wife and my relationship with my partner. Um, but yeah, that's been like my biggest mistake is just not being clear and having these high expectations of having something being done and it not being done the way that I want to.
Yeah, and I think that's an area. At the end of the day, everybody can always improve on the communication, right? My wife tells me that all the time as well.
Yeah.
But one thing I really like what you said is like you created now processes, right?
Systems.
Yeah, systems and processes in place, and I assume that's also kind of creates a little bit more synergy and around the brand and the quality too, correct?
Yeah, I would say so. Without systems, what else do you have? And I think that's like the hardest thing is like when you're in entrepreneurship mode, you forget that. But then when you're in like I I currently have a dissociation of like I'm no longer really an entrepreneur, right? Like I'm now a businessman, right? Because in entrepreneurship mode, I have to make decisions quickly and I have to be able to pivot and I have to be able to see what the market says, right? I have to listen to customer feedback, whatever it may be. I'm not at that level. I'm not at that stage of my career. I have other people in our company have kids. They are relying on me to make the right decision. So it's not about me anymore. And so like if I don't communicate, if I'm not on my game, doing a disservice to not only myself but the people around me.
Yeah, I completely agree. Again, with the folks, again, no Latino founders, the nonprofit we created, we've raised a little over, half a million dollars in the last 2, 3 years. I hired an executive director. He has
Nice.
kids. We hired a community outreach liaison to kind of help with our events for Pitch Latino and things of that nature. We got the
That's
Pitch Latino
amazing.
trademark. We just got it this week. It was the most coolest thing ever. I was like, heck yes, we got it. But to that point, there's certainly nights. Now, granted, folks, I do have a full-time career job. I work in healthcare, and I've been working in healthcare I started when I was 15, and I probably will kind of continue there for at least the next couple 8 years because, to be honest with you, I got a pension coming, and why would I want to throw that away right now?
Absolutely.
But with
Hell
that
yeah.
said,
Amen.
what all the things I'm doing, like Jonathan mentioned, I'm very much at the startup stage of my entrepreneurial journey, right? And Jonathan kind of mentioned too, like when he's talking with customers, he was kind of vague at the beginning. I'm also at that stage right now because I'm still trying to determine what works and what doesn't work, right? I'm kind of nimble enough where I'm small, like Jonathan mentioned, we're just a team of two. We're nimble enough that we can try different verticals, right? Without going too far down the vertical and screwing ourselves. We can actually kind of dip our toe in just a little bit, spend a little funding, and actually determine, okay, does this make sense for us? Do we have the core competencies, or is this just a core competency, or is this our zone of genius, right?
Yeah.
Is this going to take me from the entrepreneur or to the businessman? Because I don't want to be in the entrepreneurial stage of my entire life. Because essentially, what I think of entrepreneurs is we're constantly running, we're going to the networking events, we're constantly either looking for funding or looking for new clients. We're never at that
Begging.
stage of consistency. And that's where I'm trying to get to is the consistency.
Yeah, I would say that there's like, in my opinion, the entrepreneurial world sometimes is like the point of begging because you don't actually have like your stuff figured out.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, kudos to you for wearing so many hats and being a dad at the same time, and being a husband as well. My wife is in healthcare as well. She's been in the healthcare industry her entire career. Um, and it's interesting having her in the household with her background, and then having me, and then we always see things differently and in the best possible way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of funny because the healthcare world has so much red tape and bureaucracy and policies. And in the entrepreneurship world, you kind of create your own, policies and red tape and bureaucracy with your business. Interesting enough. It's just kind of a very, very two different kind of markets for sure. Now,
100%. Yeah. I mean, the fact I'm like, hey, just do this. And she's like, I can't do that. I'm like, why not?
yeah.
Just do it.
Yeah, like I can't go, sadly enough, even though I can, in fact, create a newsletter or a marketing campaign, but you have to be a preferred vendor with our organization. You have to
Yeah.
follow their brand guidelines, and it's just like 40 pages long. I'm like, never mind.
Yeah. This is not worth it.
Exactly. Now,
And,
Jonathan, what would you say has been some of the most rewarding moments in your entrepreneurial career?
I'm a pretty negative person. Um, it's easy to talk about the failures. I've always beat myself up quite a bit when it comes to that. Like, I don't really celebrate my wins as much as I should. Um, I would say, what are like the most rewarding things? I some things that pop in my head first is like when in the very beginning we had an employee that became pregnant and had her first child, right? Like that was really big. The other one was marriage. Another person decided to get married. So like to me, that's like a ultimate sign of respect and trust because this person is literally saying you are providing an income for me and my family, and that person has since had three children. So like that's really fun. That's like the first thing that popped in my head. From a rewarding standpoint, I mean, I think it's great to get validation of the idea that you've created. Um, I mean, the first things that come to my mind outside of all that is like personal stuff, but the Shades of Entrepreneurship podcast probably doesn't want to hear about that. Um, yeah, I mean, rewarding. I'm just like a person that's never satisfied, if I could be honest with you. And I'm just like, I'm like answering this question, thinking in my head, and I'm just realizing how sad of an answer I'm providing. But like truly, I'm just never satisfied. I am in some ways, but when it comes to my career, I'm not. And so it's like, okay, well, once this achievement is unlocked, it's the next thing. And that's just how my brain has always been. I don't really listen to feedback. I listen to feedback from my business aspects, but in terms of like the direction that I'm going, I'm going, and
Yeah.
I'm going 90 in the left hand lane, and you have one op choice to either catch up or get left behind, and that's just like how I operate, and not in an intense douchebaggy way. Like I am kind, and at least I think I am. And I am fair at the end of the day. But it's just that constant, okay, guys, like these are my goals in my life, right? I want to achieve this, and I can't achieve it if I'm going at a slow speed. And to your, I believe you said your wife had an unfortunate loss in her family, and I am sorry for that. At the same time, my mother passed several years or so ago, and then her leaving this earth put a perspective on me on time. And then in addition to that, I had a child, and then that's an additional perspective of time. And I only have so amount of time in my life. I only have so much amount of time in my day, and I really want to make sure that every single minute is spent towards that goal, that ultimate goal. And so now that the goal is here, when I was all the way starting off my career, I didn't have that purpose. I didn't understand what the problem was. So now I know what the problem is, and I'm slowly upgrading all the way up to that main goal. And that goal right now is an X deliverable of how much money is being made on a monthly basis, the amount of customers that we're helping, because you can't get money unless you help people. And then hopefully own a winery and become a farmer and never have to touch a computer again.
I love it. Well, if you want to own a winery, you got to come out to Oregon. We got the good stuff out here. Got the
Yeah,
peanuts
for
and
sure.
we got the good stuff. And one thing you mentioned, first and foremost, got to give a shout out to all the significant others that back us up. As I've been telling Jonathan, I wear multiple hats, and none of this is possible without my wife. She is an absolute godsend. I met her first day of school at Portland State University, and I can't believe she actually decided to marry me 5 years later. But Jonathan, you also mentioned, you're a bit cyclical. It's like, but at the end of the day, there's a bit of a saying: successful people are never successful because they're too busy chasing success. And I think that's you. You'll never be successful because actually you're too busy chasing the next goal. Okay, check that. All right, that's next. All right, like you mentioned, you're going 90 down the left lane, so you either get out of the way and get on. Either way, I'm going. And I really love that. And I think that is important to have because there are going to be moments in entrepreneurship or you're starting a business, or your company man, whatever you want to call yourself, you're going to fail at some point. There are going to be some hard, difficult times. And you kind of have to have a passion for what you are doing and a belief, almost like a fool's gold belief, like no matter what I do, I'm going to be successful to push through these hard times. Because sometimes I'm not saying everybody's going to have these moments, right? But I know I have had these moments myself. I've talked with former guests that have also had these moments where it's like they needed to persevere. And it was truly their passion, their belief in themselves that really pushed them forward. Now, Jonathan, have you ever had a moment? And I'm just, again, thinking about your entire career. Have you ever had a moment of self-doubt?
Oh, yeah, every day. Yeah, every day. I'm like yeah. Um what's the most recent one? I'm I would say, yeah, I would say pretty much every day. Like I probably play imposter syndrome all the time. Like I'm not qualified to do what I'm doing. Like, yeah. I mean, like I have a business degree. Okay, what the hell does that give me? I don't really care. Like, I'm not a graphic designer. Um, I'm not creative. I mean, I know what looks good. I'm a marketer, but I'm not a businessman, right? Like, I'm bad at everything. But the one thing that I do well is I just don't quit. Like, I'm always getting up. And in the word, you use the word passion, and I have a very mixed opinion about that word specifically, because I think passion only gets you so far. Personally, um, I think passion can take you to a dollar amount, but at the end of the day, I think it's the it goes back to the, and I will say a broken record at this point. I think it just goes back to the problem. Like your nonprofit is incredibly amazing and inspiring because the problem that you're solving is so large that you want to help the Latino community. And is it just Oregon, or is it?
Oregon and
Yeah.
Washington currently right now, but our goal is to scale nationally.
And that's like an incredible problem that you will probably spend your entire life trying to solve, and you'll never truly solve it, but it'll be so rewarding that like every single day you help one more extra person. That makes all the difference, right? And like, to me, you can have a passion for that, but and that's beautiful and wonderful, but I really would say that for the most part you really just want to solve that problem, and that's what wakes you up every single day. Um, the same goes for me. Like I want to make I'm tired of seeing articles about how um Olympic logos are like $32 million in order to make, right? Like no, like that shouldn't exist. Like why does that exist? Because you want to hire an expert in order to find something that to do research, like give it to a company like Penji, right? Go to an outsource website and have them do it, and then spend $1 million on like 700 different creatives, and just come up with and sit down in a meeting and just go cool, not cool, 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 and figure it out, right? Like to me, that's my problem that I'm solving. I want to make all of the creative service 70% less than what a typical provider would give you and make it easy and accessible to as many people across the world as I can.
I love it. Yeah, and I don't think people, if you're in the space and you start to understand like the number of creative softwares that are out there that you can purchase, and like it's almost like cable, it's almost like the current cable television situation we're having. You start to get so many different softwares that next thing you know, like holy crap, I'm paying thousands of dollars for all these different things, and each one does one different thing. So tell us, Jonathan, tell us a little bit more about Penji. How does it work, and who is kind of like the typical target person or target audience that you guys aim for, and who generally uses it?
Yeah, Canva is really great if you want to do it yourself, right? If you can't necessarily afford an in-house person, use
Yep.
Canva. If you don't want to do it yourself, then there's Penji, right? Like that's more or less the ideology that we're implementing. There are a lot of people that just don't want to do it themselves, or they aren't creative, or they don't have the resources, they don't know the know-how. That's fine. Canva makes it really easy for you to be literally illiterate and you can easily create something, and that's amazing. But there is a feel, and you can speak to this if you want to, but like it gets lonely sometimes, entrepreneurship,
Yes.
right? And so like who do you go to? You can go to your podcast guests, but sometimes it's really cool to be able to hire somebody and just be like, "Hey man, like what did you eat today?" Like or female, whatever it is. Like what did you do today? What how was your weekend? Oh my god, it's so nice to see you. Like, you woke up and you see a notification. Like, I'm so excited about that. Like that's fun, right? That's the part of entrepreneur. If you're not having fun, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like so so that's where I think Penji comes in is like if you want to have that relationship with somebody that you love and somebody that you want to work with, I mean that's where we come in. And so primarily we work with digital marketing agencies because they're always looking for new, cheaper alternatives for creative. But we also work with large teams. What I found, at least, is that a lot of the creative positions in most companies, they don't actually have somebody that is on the creative side. They have a lot of marketers. That's why they get hired, but they don't have the execution skills. And then again, that's kind of where we come in with the teams, is we can execute for them.
Man, I think you just said one of the best things I've ever heard is we hire marketers. We don't hire content creators. And that has been one of the difficulties. I think, again, I work in healthcare, in our institution specifically, we don't really have a good way. Like we have phenomenal marketers, but then we don't have the content creators to kind of tell the story. So like when it comes to a campaign, right? If you're going to do like a week long or a month long campaign for a specific anything, whatever, like maybe a screening or updates on guidelines or something, it's very difficult for us because we don't have any images. And at the end of the day, video is king, right? From a marketing perspective, video, real shorts, people will tend to watch those more than they read a blog or a newsletter. Just happens, folks, right? And that's just where our attention is coming from. Now, with that said, it's how do we, it's like how do we kind of create that synergy? And Penji seems to be a really good answer. So I'm going to give you an example. One thing I'm actually going through, and I'm kind of see if this is where Penji might actually fit in. How kind of detailed does Penji get in regards, like for example, do I have to come with my entire creative brief and say this is exactly what I want, or how much information do we need to kind of give in order
Yeah,
to
great
receive the end
question.
product?
Great question. So I'm a customer, right? Every time that I'm vague, I don't get what I want. And it goes back to communication, right? You don't have to have it all figured out, but you should have a little bit of an understanding that the person's not going to get it right the first try. is no different than you going on a date and being like, "Hi, my name's Gabriel, and I like, food and turtles." Like nobody's gonna fall in love with that, right? Like,
Fair.
yeah. So like if you go into Penji thinking like we're gonna solve all of your problems, like we're $500 to $1,500 a month. Like what are you expecting from that? Like you have to have time. You have to give the person an understanding or a brief of some sorts, right? So with that said, if you could provide examples, then you're fine, right? I don't know what I want, but I like this. Okay, that works, right? I think if you could do that without knowing what you want or having a brand guideline or story, then I think you will be very successful. But just know that there's an iteration process. You need to be able to make edits and modifications and all that fun stuff. So that's what's really needed at Penji is just the examples.
Yeah, yeah, folks. And I'm going to give you guys a quick cheat sheet. In fact, you guys subscribe to shadesofview.com, go check it out. But for like a brief one introduction, what is the purpose of your campaign or whatever it is? Just a brief purpose, one or two lines. And then what do you want the tone to be? Do you want it to be professional and approachable? Do you want it to be friendly and conversation? Like what is it that you want what do you want to feel when you either read or you see these images online or see a video? And then what are the key focuses, right? So really, what key focus, like what program or service are you trying to highlight? And then lastly, what is your call to action? What do you actually want to do? What do you want the people to do? You want them to subscribe to your newsletter? Do you want them to visit your website? Do you want to go to this? What is it that now that you have all these people in front of you, what is it that you want them to do? And that's exactly like when you're pitching your idea as well. I always tell individuals, the first goal is to kind of introduce yourself and kind of give them a little bit of your background, but then that's it. At the end of the day, you are not the hero to your story. The product and service that you are trying to pitch is the hero, and you're just the guide, right? The actual hero is out in the crowd listening to your pitch because those are going to be the end consumers, right? So once you introduce yourself, then you go straight into your key focuses. Okay, what do you want to talk about, right? The product or service. You talk about, here's the details of it. Here's where we've been. Here's where we've been. Here's where we're at. And here's where we're going. Right. And that's essentially your pitch. And at the end of the day, then here's where we're going will be the financial trajectory, right? Here's where we want to go in 5 years, right? And then at the end of the day, okay, what do you want? As you're closing, you have a QR code up there and say, hey, subscribe to my newsletter, or hey, visit our shop or website, or whatever the case may be, whatever you need from that audience, make sure you have some type of call to action, because again, if you have their attention, you created a value proposition. That's another important piece. Whatever your message and tone, whatever it is, it has to be value in it. It can't just be fluff. I have to have a reason why I want to continue to read down. If you get snail mail, how quickly do you take a piece of mail from in your hand to the recycling bin? It's pretty quickly. I think it's something like 5 seconds, a really, really short time. And so our attention is very short. Therefore, it needs to be popping quick and in short, brief. I need to see the value proposition right away. Right. And then from there, I'll continue to move forward. But it really is about, really creating the story, having that content creator really provide the images and the coloring that also go. In fact, folks, if you actually go and look up the psychology of color, you can go look up the psychology of color right now. There's a reason that the Shades of Entrepreneurship is actually black and white, just like the New York Times, just like Cartoon Network. The reason is because we want to be neutral. So the Shades of Entrepreneurship, the color of the logo is black and white and wants to remain neutral. If you look at Target, red, right? In fact, if you look at a Target commercial right now, you probably won't see the Target commercial until the end of the commercial, but you will see that Target red everywhere. In fact, it is now called Target Red. Adele, AT&T, right? They're all blues, right? So there's a technology, Facebook, Skype. Notice they're all blues because they're innovative. They want to be the futuristic innovation. The greens, right? The waste management, the eco-friendly folks, they tend to be the greens, right? So it's really interesting when you start to think of also the psychology of color, and that's where the content creators come into play, because they can also take your story, your message, your tone, what you're trying to do, but make it into an illustration versus verbiage, right? So it's really cool. All of the things that can happen with the creator when you put these two people together, because again, like I'm very much like Johnathan. My biggest strength is I connect people to more people, right? I make rich people richer, essentially. Mm-hmm. That's why my bread and butter truly is. And as Johnathan mentioned, my end goal as I kind of begin to create creatively insane and build it out, I would love to continue to basically, okay, now I have a lot of experience and expertise. How do I now share that? Okay, now once I leave, the healthcare institution, okay, who wants to bring me on? You want to bring me on as like a board member or a C-suite? Because my goal now is equity.
Mm,
How do I create some equity in these organizations that I'm helping? I don't want
mm,
to exploit my community. I certainly want to help my community, but also it's important not to just give away your stuff for free. You can't sell the farm. So that
okay.
those things I would say, just kind of think about it when your guys are moving forward and building out your own profession, your own entrepreneurial journey. Now, Johnathan, Penji, tell us where can folks find it? Where do you see it going in the future?
Um, Penji.co is the website. Um, where do I see it going in the future? I would say I want it to be synonymous with hiring and finding really reliable talent. I want it to be mentioned on podcasts without me having to be on a podcast. I think that's when that would be a great definition of success for me. If somebody were to bring out, oh my gosh, I use this and this is the best way that I use it, like that would be a massive success. I want to be able to take a walk or go in my car and listen to a podcast and hear our business be promoted as much as I talk about, Notion or as much as I talk about Trello and stuff like that. Like that would be amazing to me. But I want to, if I may,
Yeah.
I want to just highlight one thing that you said that I wanted to add on to on your beautiful description of, the sales cycle and the wonders of business and entrepreneurship is my biggest. Now I think about it, the biggest struggle that I have was my selling was, um, like my sales approach was too complex,
Mm,
and I think that like a lot of times that's what entrepreneurs do is they try and sell everything because that's what they're good at, or it's like, well, this is a package or you get all this, and like you find the audience, and that's like it's not actually really the case. What I found is that like one problem is all you really need to solve, and if no one else listens to you but that one person in the audience, then I think you're doing the right thing. But if you're trying to make something that appeals to the masses in front of a crowd, I think you will just be very unfulfilled in life. I don't really care if 90 if 100 people listen to this. I don't really care if 99% of your people don't care about my story. But I know that there's somebody that's still, what are we, 50-ish minutes in, 47 minutes in. Um, there's at least one person. There's one idiot that's listening right now, and that's the person that I want to talk to.
yep. Yeah. And I think that's true also like with the nonprofit sector as well. When nonprofits, they create their true north, right? But then as grant funding come available, they have to, I see a lot of nonprofits start to change their true north and what their mission is based off the grant funding. And I think that's also true with like software products sometimes where a engineer might come out with a SaaS product and they're like, well, they're not buying it yet. So maybe if I add another couple bells and whistles to it, more product, more and more and more. And then once you start, you find yourself in essentially just a cash cow that you actually, again, you have not solved any problem, and adding more bells and whistles to it is not going to bring more consumers. Because at the end of the day, like Johnathan mentioned, your focus should just be on one problem. So if you're not able to solve at least one problem with whatever product or software, you came out with, then maybe it's time to pivot. And that's okay. It's okay. Pivoting is okay. In fact, Twitter used to be a podcast platform. And then it's Twitter now, it's X. So it's continuously changing, right? Facebook to Meta to, all these things continue to have an evolution. So don't be afraid to evolve, right? Now, Johnathan, for folks that are interested in learning more about you, maybe they want to connect with you, maybe they want to just reach out. What's the best way for them to connect with you?
Love giving out my email on podcasts. So, Johnathan at penji.co, JOHNATHAN, at penji.co. If you have any questions, I am your humbled servant.
I love it. Again, so folks, check it out, theshadesofE.com. Go ahead and subscribe. We'll have all of this information. We'll also have a newsletter. Go ahead and subscribe to the newsletter. We'll have Johnathan be featured on that. We'll have a blog post with some backlinks to it. We'll also have a summary of this conversation with a photo and the audio and the video version. For those Patreon members, for $5 a month, you'll actually get the episode a week early. You also get the transcriptions. You'll also get a lot of other additional information. So go ahead and please sign up to be a Patreon. Again, please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at The Shades of E. Thank you and have a great night.
Thank you for tuning in to The Shades of Entrepreneurship. For more information, please follow The Shades of E on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or visit theshadesofE.com.